Hilchos Shvisas Yomtiv Perek Shvi'i, the laws of resting on holidays, chapter 7. Today, our topic is Chol Hamoed, the intermediate days between the first day and the last day of the holiday. It actually already came up yesterday in the context of Simcha, of rejoicing on holidays and how to treat people that passed away on those days. But today we're going to focus and zoom in on Milacha, doing labor on Chol Hamoed. Unfortunately, today it's become kind of common practice to basically treat Chol Hamoed like a regular day of the week. And people do whatever they want. But ideally, Chol Hamoed was meant to be treated as the holiday itself. And only in a case of Davar Ha'aved, which is called, something which will be lost if you don't do it on the Chol Hamoed, that was the only thing that was allowed to be done on Chol Hamoed. Today people use it as a license to do all sorts of things, but it's not so simple. Matter of fact, on the screen here, there's a book that's called Chol Hamoed Ki Ilchato, Keeping Chol Hamoed According to the Law, written by a very prominent rabbi in Jerusalem, Rabbi Farkash, and he gets down to it, the nitty-gritty, what's allowed, what's not allowed. It's a recommended read, although you might learn some things that you're not too happy to know. But nevertheless, we're going to dive deep into it today, learn all about the parameters of which melacha, which labor is permitted, and which is forbidden on Chol Hamoed. And Chol Hamoed is coming. This Rambam is being studied actually on Yom Kippur. Of course, we're not recording it on Yom Kippur, we're pre-recording it, but it's a very good preparation to Chol Hamoed of Sukkot, which is coming up very shortly, that we should keep Chol Hamoed a little better, treat these days of holiday with a little more dignity, a little more respect, act a little more godly on those days, and keep away from some of the labors that are actually forbidden. So, without further ado, here we go. Halacha Aleph. Chuloi shel moed, the weekdays of the holiday. Afal pi shalei nemar by Shabbosain, even though it doesn't say explicitly in the Torah that you have to rest on those days. Hoyil v'nikra mikra kodesh, since it's also included in that which is called a gathering of holiness. The whole 7 days, the whole 8 days are called Kodesh, and it's also a time when sacrifices, celebratory holiday sacrifices were brought in the Holy Temple. Asur ba'asiyas malacha, it's forbidden to do work on these days. So it shouldn't be treated like a regular weekday, which has no holiness. This day has got to have some holiness. How do you demonstrate the holiness? By not doing regular work. Anybody who performs forbidden labors on these days, the rabbis had the authority to give you rabbinic lashes. We can't hold you account biblically because the prohibition is only rabbinic. Not every type of work of labor is forbidden on the holidays, like a holiday. Because the bottom line, the reason behind prohibiting certain things to be done on these days was all so we shouldn't come to treat it like a weekday in every respect. Therefore, there are some labors that are forbidden and some that are permitted. They are the following. Any labor that if you don't do it on Chol Hamoed is going to be a lot of loss, do it. So long as there isn't too much bother involved in the work. Ketzad, and the Rambam, in the agrarian society that he lived in and that people of old lived in, gives many practical agricultural labors that are associated with this. What does this look like? Mashkin beis hashlachin b'mayed. A field that relies on irrigation can be irrigated on the holiday, on Chol Hamoed. Avalei beis hamashke, but not a land that is already well irrigated. If you're not going to feed, to irrigate the Beis Hashlachin, which is the thirsty land, the parched land, all the trees in it are going to get lost. So therefore you can do it. Doesn't take too much work. But it's an already irrigated land, you can't irrigate it again. Yet, when you do irrigate it, you should not draw water and irrigate it from a pool of water, or from rainwater gathered, because that's a big bother. What you should do is you should irrigate it from a already existing stream, whether it's existing for a long time, or just begun to flow now, you divert it and you irrigate your fields with it. This is California aqueduct, a very big diversion. But the idea, you see how you can divert certain channels to go to certain places and irrigate certain fields. So you can divert your irrigation channel, irrigation stream, and irrigate your parched land, and the same applies to all similar things. Gimel, The person can overturn his olives on Chol Hamoed. Olives, when they would go into a press, were first laid down one way, then they were overturned in preparation for pressing. You can do that overturning on Chol Hamoed. You can grind them, you can press them. You can even fill up the barrels of oil and cover them, as you do on weekdays. Why? Because if it's going to be lost, if you don't do the work, you can do it normally. It doesn't even require an abnormal change. A person can also bring in his produce for fear of thieves, so long as you take them in a modest way, in a private way. But you can also take out your flax from the soaking waters, so it shouldn't get destroyed. So to a vineyard, if it's time to harvest, is during Chol Hamoed, so you can harvest it. However, it is forbidden for a person to have in mind purposely to delay these works, these labors, and anything like it, and leave them to do on the Chol Hamoed because you're going to be anyways free. That's not allowed. If you have in mind purposely, you push off, you delay your work to the Chol Hamoed, and you end up doing it on Chol Hamoed, the high court would mix in. They would destroy your work and make it ownerless, free for all. But if you delayed your work purposely and then you passed away, unfortunately, we don't find the son who inherits this work after him. We don't destroy the work from being used by him. And we don't even stop the son from finishing whatever work his father started on the holiday, so it shouldn't be lost over Chol Hamoed. Hey, if a person needed to sew a piece of clothing or build a building on Chol Hamoed, he needed it. If he was a simpleton, he wasn't considered an expert in this craft, he can do whatever he needs to do normally, because anyways, a regular guy sewing isn't going to turn out professional. But if he was an expert professional, he has to do whatever he's doing as a regular person would do. What does that look like? Bitfira machliv. If you're sewing, do uneven stitches. Not in a very, very close roll, one after the other. Make them a little bit spaced out. Ubibinyan. If you're building, also do it in an unprofessional way. Make a freestanding stone wall. Put stones and not putting mortar in between. If you need to smooth cracks in the ground, you can roll over it with your hands or feet. As you would do with a trowel. This is the different types. On the top, you have a regular one. On the bottom, you have a finishing trowel, where you would kind of put it over mortar to flatten it, so that you can do it with your hands or with your feet. A little different on Chol Hamoed. Anything similar, again, if you're not a professional, do whatever you're doing. If you're a professional, do it as a regular guy would do it. If somebody had produce attached to the ground, grain attached to the ground, and all he has to eat on Chol Hamoed is from this grain, even if there is an actual loss, you leave it over the holiday, the grain isn't going to get ruined. But since he has nothing to eat, we don't make him go buy food from the market till he can harvest his own grain after the holiday. Ella, we let him do whatever he wants. He can harvest, he can gather, he can thresh, he can winnow. He can sort, he can grind whatever he needs. As long as he doesn't thresh with cows, full-on thing. Do it in a more simpler way. Because whatever doesn't have a direct loss, you must do an abnormal change. So do some kind of a change, but do whatever you need to do to get your own produce. And we're going to see a couple of times throughout this chapter that if you don't have anything to eat, many, many things were waived. Many prohibitions were waived. You can do a lot more. You have a license to do a lot more things. The same applies in all similar situations. Pickled foods that if you pickle them now, you'll be able to eat them on the other side. While it's still Chol Hamoed, you can pickle them. If they're only going to be ready to eat after holiday, then you cannot pickle them on Chol Hamoed. The person can trap fish. however much she's able to trap, umeleach hakoil b'mayed, and salt everything on Chol Hamoed, even if you're not going to actually eat everything. Sharei efshar sheyechal mehen b'mayed. It's possible for you to eat them all on the holiday. Im yischait oisan b'yadei pa'amim rabbeis ad sheyisrakchu. If you squeeze them all with your hands many times till they become soft, technically you could have them all ready for food on Chol Hamoed. So even if practically it's not going to happen, you can catch all the fish and salt them all, and it's okay. Ches matilin sheichar b'mayed l'tzarech hamayed. We can ferment beer on Chol Hamoed if it's for the needs of Chol Hamoed. But if it's not for the needs of Chol Hamoed, it's only going to be ready afterwards. Also, then it's forbidden. Echad sheichar tmarim, the echad sheichar sa'irim, whether we're talking about date beer or barley beer. Afal pisha yesh lo yashan, ma'idem b'sheisam min achadash. Even if you have old beer, you can make a trick, ferment new beer. She'ein ha'arama zu nikeres lo raya, because nobody can really tell. It's not you need a sharp eye to tell that you did this trick. The same applies in all similar situations. Any work which is being done for the needs of Chol Hamoed, you need the result on Chol Hamoed. When the craftsmen who typically do this for a profession do such work on the holiday, they do it in private. What does that mean? Let's say you have people who trap, they're fishermen for a living, or they grind, or they're harvesters, and they want to sell their products in the market, and it's going to be sold on Chol Hamoed. They can work in private for the needs of whatever's going to be produced on Chol Hamoed. But if you're doing something not for the needs of Chol Hamoed, also it's forbidden. If you did what you did really for the needs of Chol Hamoed, and then you left over, then it's okay. Halacha Yut. We can attend to all public needs on Chol Hamoed. Ketzah, what does that look like? We can fix water ruins in the public domain. We can fix the roads. We can fix the streets. We can dig for the publics, pits, ditches, caves. We can also dig out rivers for them so they can have channels of water to drink from. We can ingather water into pits and caves that are owned by the public. And we can fix their cracks. We can remove thorns from the roads. We can measure public mikvahs to know if they're big enough to be used by people or for dishes. Any mikvah which is found to be missing, lacking some water, we can direct water to it, complete its measure. No problem. It's for the public. Chol Hamoed is waived. Members, messengers of the high courts, agents of the high courts can go take care of high court business. Now here we're going to learn a bunch of different topics that are each going to be expounded upon in their book of the Rambam, in their set of laws respectively, but here just mention them all in short. Number one, they can go out lahafkir es hakilayim, to declare kilayim, mixtures of different planted seeds, ownerless. We're not allowed to plant certain seeds, certain foods together. If you do, the high court would declare it ownerless. So the agents of the court can go out to take care of that on Chol Hamoed. Upaydin es hashvuyim, we can redeem captives on Chol Hamoed. Different types of endowments that were consecrated to the temple. You make money or different objects holy. You can redeem them if you want to transfer them back to regular money. You can do that on Chol Hamoed. We can give to drink the sota. She's a suspected adulteress, a woman who goes into seclusion with another man. We're not sure if she actually did a sin. The husband takes her to the holy temple, gives her a whole type of bitter water to drink. It would be a test. If she was an adulteress, she would explode. If not, she would go back and become even more healthy. We can do this process on Chol Hamoed. The surfer nesaparda, we can burn the red heifer to produce the ash needed for purifying people from corpse tuma on Chol Hamoed. The urfer nesaegla, we can also chop off the back of the neck of a calf. This was done called the egla arufa. If a dead body was discovered near a city, nobody knows who killed it, the nearest city would have to bring such a calf, chop off the back of its neck, and it was part of an atonement process for the city for not supervising their environs properly and letting people be killed there. That's called the egla arufa. This process can be done on Chol Hamoed. V'roitz in eved ivri, we can drill the ear of a Jewish servant. A Jewish servant typically goes free after 6 years. If he wants to stay under the jurisdiction of his owner, you put him to a door, drill a hole through his ear. It was a symbolic mitzvah, and that can be done, and then he would stay under the jurisdiction of his owner forever till Yovel, and that can be done on Chol Hamoed. We can purify somebody who had sarat, somebody who had a lesion on his skin, and goes through the purification process. That can be done on Chol Hamoed. We can make a mark pour some paint around graves to show where they are if the rains have erased those marks. So the Kohanim who cannot go near graves will separate from them. For all these are called the needs of the public, and they can be done on Chol Hamoed. Yud Bey is v'danim dinei Maimonides v'dinei makos v'dinei nefashos b'moed. The court can sit on money cases, cases involving lashes, and even capital cases on Chol Hamoed. Umish lekibel alav hadin, somebody who didn't accept the ruling of the high court, mishamtin oiseh b'moed. We can ostracize him. We can write up a bill of excommunication on Chol Hamoed. Ukeshem shadanin b'moed. The same way we can do courts, judicial. We can adjudicate cases on Chol Hamoed. Kach koisvin masei bezdin v'chol adai malai. We can also put into writing any acts taken by the court or anything similar to it. The Rambam gives us a bunch of examples that are also going to each be expounded in their own set of laws. Ketzah, what does that mean? What does it look like? Judges can write down the letters of appraisal that they wrote for a creditor. If a person has money owed to him by somebody else and the guy has no money to pay, in certain cases the creditor can actually take the property. He can seize the property of the borrower. But first, the high court must send appraisers to evaluate the worth of his property. And once they do so, they write up a letter with their findings. That can be written on Chol Hamoed. The igres shemachru behen limzayna isha v'habanes. Person passes away, and stuff must be taken from his estate to feed his wife and kids. Under certain appraisal measures, the high court would send people to evaluate the worth of his property and feed his wife and kids. They can write out the letter with their findings on Chol Hamoed. Ushtari chalitza, documents of chalitza. Chalitza is an alternative to levirate marriage. When a person passes away childless, it is a mitzvah upon the brother of the deceased to marry his dead brother's wife and have children to continue his dynasty. If he doesn't want to engage in the marriage, they can do chalitza. They go to the court, the woman, the widow, takes off the shoe of the brother-in-law, and it's a whole complicated process, but that basically frees him and her to marry whoever they want, and the high court can write up the document recording the chalitza. Umei unin, documents of refusal. If a girl has her father pass away when she's young and her mother marries her off while she's under the age of bat mitzvah, the marriage isn't considered to be a full-level marriage, and she doesn't require a divorce if she wants to get out of it. All she requires is mi'un, refusal. She goes to the court, she says, I don't want to be married to this guy. They have a document written up, and the whole marriage is out. That's called mi'un. The mi'un document can be drawn up on Chol Hamoed. Anything similar of such matters that the judges have to write down so they can remember them. Like, let's say, the claims of different litigants in a court case, or things which the litigants accepted upon themselves. Let's say one litigant said, I trust this guy as a witness or that guy as a judge. You write that down on Chol Hamoed. If somebody has to make a loan on Chol Hamoed, is to borrow money, and the creditor, the lender, didn't believe him just verbally, they can write up a document of loan, IOU. You can also write up divorces and marriage documents and receipts and gift documents. All of these are considered to be like the needs of the community. Yud Gimel, outside of that, most writing cannot be done. The asur lichtei b'moed afilu sfarim tefillin u'mezuzas. We cannot write on Chol Hamoed, even Sefer Torah, even tefillin, even mezuzas. Ve'ein magihin afilu eis achas b'sefer ha'azara. You cannot check a Torah to correct it, even if it's one letter, and even if it's in the book that was kept in the Holy Temple. You know, the highest level trustworthy Sefer Torah cannot be corrected on Chol Hamoed. Because it's work that's being done not for the sake of Chol Hamoed. But a person who needs can write his own tefillin or his own mezuzah for himself on Chol Hamoed. Interestingly, there's a big argument whether we put on tefillin on Chol Hamoed or not. It seems from here, as some commentaries point out, that the Rambam holds that you do put on tefillin on Chol Hamoed. That's why it's called the need of the Moed, because you can write your own tefillin. Others say no, it means you don't have tefillin for after the holiday, and you can write tefillin. But either way, of course, there is a machlokas among Ashkenazim and Sfardim, Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, whether we put on tefillin on Chol Hamoed. But the Rambam says you can write tefillin and a mezuzah for yourself on Chol Hamoed. B'toivet chilas lebida, you can also spin blue wool to put on your tzitzit if it's your own. And if you have nothing else to eat, and that's your whole parnasa, then of course you can write whatever tefillin and mezuzahs you need and sell it to others, enough to make your living. One can write letters of farewell, inquiring about well-being. Just, hello, how are you? on Chol Hamoed. The Kosev Cheshbonosav u'Mechashev Yitziyosav. You can write up your accounts, your expenditures. Figure out. You can sit with your accountant on Chol Hamoed. Sheksivos elu ein adam nizar b'tikunan me'oid. Because these writings, people are not so careful about very much. The nimtzu k'maisei hedyet b'malachis, they're considered like a task performed by an ordinary person. If, of course, though, accounting gets more difficult and more complex, and it becomes a professional work, then you should stay away from writing those things on Chol Hamoed. Tesvav oisin kol tzarchi hameis b'moed. We can do all needs. We can attend to all the needs of a dead body on Chol Hamoed. Grazes in sa'ara yomechabsim kesusay va'oisim le'aren. Cut his hair if need be, launder his clothing, make him a coffin. Ve'im le'hoyo lahem nesarim. If there weren't boards for the coffin, mevi'in kairis, you can bring beams. Ve'noisrin mehen nesarim, and cut out boards, bitzina, modestly, privately, b'soy chabayis, in the house. But you can literally make a coffin from scratch. Ve'im haya adam mefursam, if it was a public person, oisin afilu bashuk, you can construct the coffin even in the market. Aval ein kirsten eitz min hayar. We don't cut down a tree from the forest, linsar mimenu luches la'arin, to make boards from the arin for the coffin from them. Ve'ein chaytz v'navanim livnes bahem kever. Neither do we dig out stones to build up a grave site. That far we don't go. But if you have the materials and they're raw, you can construct them into whatever you need for the dead body. Tezayin ein royin as hanegoyim b'moed. We cannot check lesions on the holiday. I mentioned this before, tzarat, a person can get a lesion on his skin or on his clothes or on his home, and meeting certain conditions, it made the person or the home or the clothes impure. Sometimes you didn't know if it classified as a nega, and so you'd go to the Kohen to check. Now, the Kohen cannot do this checking on Chol Hamoed. Shema yimatzei tameh, because maybe you'll find that the answer is that you're impure, v'nimtza chagay nepach le'evel, and your holiday, which is supposed to be a time of rejoicing, becomes a time of mourning, so we avoid the whole thing to begin with. Bring it after the holidays. We don't get married, and we don't do levirate marriage, yibum, on Chol Hamoed. So we don't drown out, we don't forget the rejoicing of the holiday in the rejoicing or because of the rejoicing of the wedding. But a person can remarry his divorcee, and we can also get engaged, betroth a woman on Chol Hamoed, not actually getting married, so long as you don't make a meal, a celebratory meal for the engagement or for the marriage. We have a principle that's called Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. We don't mix one joy with the other. We don't mix another joy with the joy of the holiday. Today is the holiday, we're rejoicing with the holiday. Yud Zayin, Ein Megalchin, Ve'ein Mechabsin B'Moed. We don't shave and we don't do laundry on Chol Hamoed. Because a person might delay his facial needs or his laundry needs till the middle of the holiday, which will lead you to enter the holiday, the first day of the holiday, in a disgusting state, with your hair unkempt and your clothes unlaundered. Therefore, they said, do all your laundry before, all your shaving before. If anybody who was in a situation where he could not shave or he could not do laundry on the eve of the holiday, then it's permitted to do laundry and to shave on a holiday. For example, Yud Ches, Keita, what does this look like? Oh, here we have our laundry. If a mourner, the seventh day of Shiva, came out on holiday, so he couldn't shave before. Or it came out on the eve of the holiday, it was Shabbos. And it was Shabbos, you can't shave. Let's say the holiday began on Sunday. Or a person comes from a long trip at sea, and he didn't go for a vacation. But he went for business or the like. Somebody who's released from prison or from captivity. They couldn't shave or do laundry before. Somebody who was in excommunication, and was only permitted out of his ban on Chol Hamoed. We learned in the first book of the Rambam that when you're excommunicated, you cannot shave or do laundry. Now he's able to, only on Chol Hamoed. If somebody made an oath not to shave and not to do laundry, then he never asked a sage to annul his vow, only on Chol Hamoed. He only got around to it then. All these people can shave and can do laundry no problem on Chol Hamoed. But in any of these cases, if they had time to shave before holiday and they didn't, asurin, they're forbidden. But a Nazirite or a person with tzarat, both who have to be shaved at the end of their purification process, if the time of their shaving arrived, whether it arrived in Chol Hamoed or before the holiday, even if they did have time and for whatever reason it got delayed, it comes holiday Chol Hamoed, you shave. Mutarin legaleach b'moed, they can and they actually should shave on Chol Hamoed, shelo yashu karbanei seyan, so they don't delay their sacrifices. After the Nazarite and the Mitzorah were shaved, they also had to bring sacrifices, which the shaving was a prerequisite for. So if they didn't shave, they would delay their sacrifices. When it comes to sacrifices, we're going to see in the 9th book of the Rambam, there's a major prohibition to delay sacrifices even by one day. So because of the sacrifices, they should shave at the earliest opportunity. Anybody who arises from a state of ritual impurity to ritual purity, mutar legaleach b'moed, may also shave on Chol Hamoed. The katan shenoila, the child who was born, bein b'moed, bein lifnei hamoed, whether he was born on Chol Hamoed or he was born just before the holiday, mutar legalche b'moed, you can shave his hair on Chol Hamoed. I guess it's a kid who was born with a lot of hair, needed to be shaved, he can be shaved. Other commentaries say it doesn't just mean an actual kid who was born, it means a kid any time before the age of chinuch, for 5 or 6 years old, can be shaved, given a haircut on Chol Hamoed. The Anshe Mishmar, members of the Mishmar, we're going to see more about this later in the Rambam, the Kohanim, who served in the temple, were divided into 24 groups. Not everybody can come whenever they wanted. There was 24 different family groups, and every group was assigned a different week in the year, such that your family served 2 to 3 times a year in the Holy Temple. That was called the Mishmar, the weekly group. So members of the Mishmar, Shesholma Mishmartan B'Soich HaMoed, let's say their week ended in middle of Chol Hamoed. Say holiday was on a Wednesday, so you have 3 days Chol Hamoed, and now it's Shabbos, and their time is over. Mutarin Legaleach. Now they're also allowed to shave on Chol Hamoed. Because you don't know it yet, but I'm telling you, says the Rambam, members of the Mishmar during their week weren't allowed to shave. So once their week ends, if it ends in Chol Hamoed, they couldn't shave before, so they can shave now. Chaf, mutar litel safa, b'chol shel moed, you can shave the mustache on Chol Hamoed, anybody can. V'litel tziparnayim v'afilu b'kli, and to cut our nails, even with an implement. It's the Rambam's opinion, we don't rule like this halachically. U'ma'averes ha'isha seyar mibeis ha'shechi mibeis ha'erva. A woman can also remove hair from her armpit and from the pubic area, bein bayad, bein bekli, whether with a hand or with an instrument. V'oisa kol tachshita b'moed, she can do all her makeup also on, or jewelry makeup on Chol Hamoed. Kleicheles, she can make her eyes. Upaikeses, some say this means braiding the hair. Some say it means putting a certain type of element on your face that would help the skin shine. Uma'averes srak al paneha, she can put rouge on her face. V'tefeles atzma besid, and cover herself with plaster, also as a way of helping the skin. V'chayetzu, and something similar. V'hu shetucha lekalfe b'moed, so long as she can peel it off, remove it during Chol Hamoed, it isn't something permanent that you have to leave over for a few days. Chaf Aleph, hazavim v'hazavos, men and women who experienced irregular discharges and they become impure. The hanides v'hayildes, menstruating women, birthing women. The chol ha'elim mituma l'tara b'soich hamoed, and anybody else who arises from a state of ritual impurity to purity on Chol Hamoed, hare'elu mutarin lechabes, can do their laundry. U'misha ein le'al choluk echad, somebody only has one piece of clothing, hare'ezem mechabse b'moed, he can launder it on Chol Hamoed, mitb'ches ha'yadayim, u'mitb'ches ha'saparim, u'mitb'ches ha'sfag, cloths, hand cloths, cloths used by barbers, and cloths that are used for bathing. Hare'elu mutarin lechabes b'moed, can be laundered on the holiday, on Chol Hamoed. V'chein klei pishtan, also linen clothing, mutar lechabsan b'moed, can be laundered on Chol Hamoed, mepeshet tzrichim kibus tamid, because they need constant care, constant laundering. Afilu niskabsu erev, even if you already did laundry before the holiday, you're going to need to do it again during Chol Hamoed. Chav beis ein oisin schayra b'moed, we cannot do business with merchandise on Chol Hamoed. Bein limkar, bein liknes, whether to sell or to buy. But if it's a lost opportunity, it's not common to find it after the holiday. Let's say a ship or a caravan arrived in town and they're only going to sell now, so they want to leave. And they're selling for cheap or buying for expensive. You can then buy or sell with them. But houses, slaves, and animals, much more like real estate, and bigger purchases can only be made only if it's necessary for the festival. Chav Gimel, those who need to sell produce, clothing, or utensils, they can sell secretly, privately, for whatever is necessary for the festival. Ketzah, what does that mean? What does it mean privately? If the store opened into a little corner area or to an alleyway, you can open the store as normal. But if the store opened to a public thoroughfare, open one door and close the other. The Erev Yom Teva Acharon Shel Chag HaSukkos, on the day before the last day of Sukkot, day before Shmini Atzeret, you should take out all your stuff decorate the market with produce, b'shvil kavod Yom Tov, because of the honor of the holiday. So there you can open the store fully. It's not a problem. You're adding to the honor of the festival. Moichrei tavlin, those who sell spices, moichrei kedarkan mefarhesia, can open their doors no problem. Sell in public, as the commentators explain. Everybody knows you don't sell spices for long term. You sell it to be used very soon, and so it's all for the need of the festival. Chav dalid, kol she'asr la'asosei b'moed, anything which is forbidden for a Jew to do on Chol Hamoed, einay omer lenachri la'asosei, you cannot hand it off to a goy to do it. The kol she'asr la'asosei b'moed, anything though which is forbidden to do on Chol Hamoed, im einay ma'yoichal, if you don't have anything to eat, harei za'oisei kedei parnasasa, you can do whatever it takes to get your livelihood. V'chein oisei schayra kedei parnasasa, or you can do commercial business to get your parnasa, to get your livelihood. Here there's room for a trick. A rich guy who needs something done for him can hire a poor worker who he knows has nothing to eat to do for him something forbidden on the holiday. That guy takes payment, he makes his livelihood through it, so for him it was permitted. It's being done for the rich guy, no problem. Also you, as the purchaser, as the customer, you see that a store owner needs to sell to make a living, you can buy something even if you don't need it for the holiday, for the needs of the seller, who doesn't have what to eat. You can contract, hire a worker over a certain job on Chol Hamoed to do it after Chol Hamoed. Provided you don't weigh or measure or count the merchandise or calculate whatever you have to do as you would do during the weekday. If a Gentile gets a contract to do a job for a Jew, even if the job is meant to be done outside the city's limits, the Jew may not let the non-Jew do the work on Chol Hamoed, because everybody knows he was contracted. This work is being done by the non-Jew for a Jew. And people are going to think that you hired the non-Jew to do the work on Chol Hamoed by the hour. In truth, you only contracted him. He can do the job whenever he wants on his terms. But because they might think you're paying him by the hour, in which case he's working for you on Chol Hamoed because he has to, they're going to suspect you that, and you don't want to lead to those suspicions. Not everybody knows the differences between hired workers and contracted workers. And therefore it's forbidden. You don't want to create mistaken impressions, so you stay away from it. And anytime you contract the non-Jew, he can only do work after the holiday.